This wasn't supposed to happen. The army marched to free Jerusalem. Instead, they destroyed the greatest Christian city on earth. Thousands died beneath the sign of the cross, not at the hands of Muslims, not by pagan kingdoms, but by fellow Christians. The men who had sworn a sacred oath to reclaim the Holy Land turned their swords on believers who worshipped the same Christ. For 3 terrible days, churches burned, homes were looted, sacred relics disappeared, women, children, priests, even monasteries were not spared. The city they attacked was Constantinople, the beating heart of Eastern Christianity, protected by walls that had stood for centuries and admired across the medieval world. The attack stunned Europe. Even the Pope, who had called for the Crusade, condemned what happened after learning the full extent of the devastation. How did a holy mission become one of history's greatest betrayals? The answer begins hundreds of miles from Jerusalem. It begins with debt, with ambition, and with one decision that quietly changed the course of history before a single battle for the Holy Land was ever fought. Because this crusade was never going where its soldiers believed. In the autumn of 1095, a single speech changed Europe. At the Council of Clermont, Pope Urban II stood before bishops, nobles, and ordinary believers. His message was simple but electrifying. Jerusalem, the city where Christians believed Jesus had lived, died, and risen again, was under Muslim control. Pilgrims reported dangers on their journeys, and the Byzantine Empire, weakened by years of war, had pleaded for military help against advancing Turkish forces. Urban's answer was extraordinary. Not a treaty, not an army raised by kings, a crusade. Whoever took up the cross and marched east would fight not only for land, but for God. For medieval Christians, this was unlike any war they had ever known. It was preached as an act of faith, a path to redemption, a chance for sins to be forgiven. Across France, Germany, England, and Italy, thousands stitched cloth crosses onto their clothing. Some sold their farms, others left behind wives, children, and fortunes they would never see again. Many knew they might never return, but they believed eternity mattered more than earthly life. The First Crusade shocked the world. Against overwhelming odds, the Crusaders captured Jerusalem in 1099. For many in Western Europe, it seemed like undeniable proof that God had blessed their mission. But victory proved fragile. Within decades, Muslim leaders began reclaiming territory. Then, in 1187, one defeat shattered Christian confidence. The great commander Saladin defeated the Crusader army at the Battle of Hattin. Soon after, Jerusalem itself fell. The loss echoed across Europe like a funeral bell. Kings launched new expeditions. The Third Crusade brought famous rulers, including England's Richard the Lionheart, to the Holy Land. They fought brilliantly, but Jerusalem remained out of reach. By the end of the 12th century, Christendom faced an uncomfortable truth. 3 crusades had failed to secure the Holy City. If Jerusalem was to be won again, something had to change. In 1198, a young and ambitious pope ascended to the throne of St. Peter. His name was Pope Innocent III. Only in his 30s, he possessed enormous confidence and an even greater vision. He believed the church should guide the destiny of kings, and he believed Jerusalem could still be reclaimed. Within months, he called for another crusade. This one would be different. Instead of marching overland through hostile territory territory, the Crusaders would strike by sea. The target remained the same: Jerusalem. Volunteers answered once again. French nobles pledged their fortunes. Knights sharpened their swords. Priests blessed banners embroidered with the cross. Across Europe, hope returned. Few realized they had already made one fatal mistake. A crusade could inspire an army, but inspiration could not build ships. For that, they would need Venice, and Venice had its own ambitions. The road to Jerusalem would not be decided by faith, it would be decided by a contract. Why did the world's richest maritime republic gain control over a holy war, and what price would the Crusaders pay? In the early 13th century, no city in Europe controlled the sea like Venice. It wasn't the largest kingdom, it wasn't the strongest army, but it possessed something every crusader desperately needed: ships, thousands of them. Venice had become the commercial heart of the Mediterranean. Its merchants traded with Christian kingdoms, Muslim ports, and even the Byzantine Empire. Every voyage made the Republic richer. Every harbor strengthened its influence. If the Fourth Crusade was going to reach the Holy Land by sea, it would need Venice. In the early 12th century, Crusader leaders negotiated an extraordinary contract with the Venetian government. Venice agreed to suspend much of its commercial activity for an entire year. In return, it would build a fleet capable of transporting approximately 33,500 Crusaders, along with horses, weapons, and enough supplies for a long campaign. It was one of the largest logistical operations medieval Europe had ever attempted. The price was staggering: about 85,000 silver marks, a fortune beyond imagination. The Crusaders believed enough volunteers would arrive to cover the cost. They were wrong. When the departure date came, the expected army never appeared. Many Crusaders chose different ports, others traveled overland. Some never came at all. Instead of more than 30,000 warriors, only around 12,000 assembled in Venice. The fleet was ready, the war was ready, but the money wasn't. When the accounts were counted, the Crusaders fell tens of thousands of silver marks short. They had made a promise they could not keep, and Venice had no intention of accepting failure. The Republic's leader was an extraordinary man. Enrico Dandolo was nearly 90 years old, nearly blind, yet still one of the sharpest political minds in Europe. He saw something others did not: a desperate army, an unpaid debt, and an opportunity. Instead of demanding immediate payment, Dandolo made an offer. Venice would postpone the debt if the Crusaders first helped recover a rebellious Adriatic port. Its name was Zara. Today, we know it as Zadar in modern Croatia. The problem: Zara was not a Muslim city. It was a Catholic Christian city, protected by a Christian king. The Crusaders hesitated. This wasn't why they had taken the cross. Their vows were to liberate Jerusalem, not attack fellow believers. Yet weeks passed. Food supplies dwindled. The debt remained. Without Venice's ships, the crusade would collapse before it even began. One compromise followed another, until compromise became surrender. In November 1202, the Crusader fleet appeared outside Zara. The citizens raised crosses from their walls. Some displayed Christian banners, others pleaded with the attackers, reminding them they worshipped the same God. It made no difference. The assault began. Walls were breached. Homes were looted. The city fell. The Fourth Crusade had spilled Christian blood long before reaching the Holy Land. When news reached Pope Innocent III, he was outraged. He had explicitly forbidden an attack on Zara. In response, he excommunicated the Crusaders and the Venetians for attacking fellow Catholics. A crusade
crusade launched in the name of Christ had already been condemned by Christendom's highest authority. For many armies, that would have ended everything. Instead, it became only the beginning. As winter settled over the Adriatic, an unexpected visitor entered the camp. He carried a proposal from a prince without a throne, a proposal promising unimaginable wealth, enough money to erase every debt, enough soldiers to continue the crusade, enough influence to change the fate of an empire. The destination was no longer Jerusalem. Now, all roads pointed towards Constantinople. Why would Christian knights agree to place a Byzantine prince on the throne? And how did that decision lead them to attack the greatest Christian city in the world?
The Crusaders had already crossed one line. Now they were about to cross another. Waiting for them was a young man with a desperate promise. His name was Alexios Angelos. He was the son of a deposed Byzantine emperor and claimed that his throne had been stolen. If the Crusaders restored him to power, he vowed to reward them beyond anything they had imagined. He promised enormous sums of silver, food and supplies, 10,000 Byzantine soldiers for the crusade, and perhaps most significant of all, he promised to help reunite the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches under the authority of the Pope. To Crusader leaders, it sounded like divine providence. Their debts would disappear, their expedition could continue, and a centuries-old religious division might finally heal. But there was one problem. To keep that promise, they first had to attack Constantinople. No city on earth compared to Constantinople. Founded by Emperor Constantine nearly 9 centuries earlier, it stood at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. Its markets overflowed with silk from China, spices from India, and treasures from across the known world. Its walls had turned back Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, and countless other invaders. For generations, they had been considered impossible to breach. At its heart stood the magnificent Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in Christendom. Its golden dome shimmered above the city like a second sun. To millions of Orthodox Christians, this was more than a capital. It was the center of their faith. In the summer of 1203, the impossible happened. A Christian army arrived by sea, not to defend Constantinople, to threaten it. The city's defenders stared in disbelief. Many could scarcely believe the banners they saw: crosses, papal standards, knights wearing the symbols of a holy crusade. No Muslim army had come. Their fellow Christians had. The assault was swift. Venetian sailors fought from the water. Crusaders attacked the land walls. After fierce fighting, sections of the city fell into chaos. Fire spread through entire neighborhoods. Smoke rose over the skyline. The emperor fled, and Alexios IV entered the city in triumph. For a brief moment, it appeared the gamble had worked. The Crusaders had restored their chosen emperor. Now they expected payment, but promises made in exile are easier than promises kept on a throne. Alexios IV inherited an empire already weakened by political turmoil and financial strain. The imperial treasury could not satisfy the vast sums he had promised. To raise money, taxes increased. Sacred treasures were melted down. Public anger exploded. The emperor the Crusaders had restored became deeply unpopular among his own people. The alliance unraveled almost immediately. Winter tightened its grip. The Crusaders waited outside the city. Their money never came. Food grew scarce. Trust vanished. Inside Constantinople, resentment turned into rebellion. Citizens blamed the emperor. They blamed the Latins. Most of all, they blamed the foreign army camped outside their walls. Then everything collapsed. A palace coup swept through the capital. Alexios IV was imprisoned. Soon afterwards, he was dead. A new emperor took power.
He refused every agreement made with the Crusaders. No payment, no supplies, no alliance. The Crusaders now faced a terrifying reality. They had abandoned Jerusalem. They had attacked Christians. They had accumulated crushing debt, and they had nothing to show for it. Some urged retreat. Others demanded negotiation. But powerful voices argued there was only one way to recover what had been lost. Take the city. Take its wealth. Take everything. The greatest Christian city in the world, prepared to fight, not against Islam, not against pagans, but against fellow followers of Christ. By sunrise, history would never be the same. The Crusaders had come to collect a debt, but when they breached the walls of Constantinople, they unleashed 3 days of destruction that would fracture Christendom for centuries.
The negotiations were over. The Crusaders had made their decision. If Constantinople would not pay, it would be taken. For weeks, both sides had prepared for the battle everyone once believed impossible. Behind the walls stood one of the richest cities on earth. Outside them waited an army that had begun its journey, believing it was marching to Jerusalem. Neither side could fully grasp what was about to happen. The attack began at sunrise. Venetian ships closed the distance beneath a hail of arrows and stones. Floating siege towers rose beside the walls. Ladders crashed against the battlements. Knights climbed. Defenders fought them back again and again, but persistence slowly became momentum. Then a section of the defenses gave way. After nearly 9 centuries of resisting foreign invaders, Constantinople had fallen, not to a Muslim army, not to a pagan empire, to fellow Christians. What followed lasted 3 days and forever changed the history of Christianity. Order collapsed. Homes and public buildings were plundered. Churches and monasteries were stripped of valuables. Relics that had been preserved for centuries disappeared into the hands of soldiers and merchants. Works of art that connected the city to the ancient Roman and Byzantine worlds were destroyed or scattered across Europe. Many treasures that survive today in Western Europe trace part of their journey back to those days. For the people of Constantinople, the deepest wound was not material, it was spiritual. The city that had stood for centuries as the heart of Eastern Christianity had been overrun by an army carrying the same symbol of faith. The cross that had once united believers now marked opposing sides. Trust was broken in a way that could not easily be repaired. Even in Western Europe, many were stunned. News of the sack spread rapidly. The Pope had never intended the Crusade to end this way. He had already condemned earlier attacks on Christian cities. The destruction of Constantinople revealed how far events had drifted from the original mission. The Crusade had begun with Jerusalem as its destination. Instead, it had conquered the greatest Christian capital in the world. The victors divided the city and its territories among themselves. A new Latin empire was proclaimed. Venice gained valuable ports, islands, and trading privileges that strengthened its commercial dominance across the eastern Mediterranean. But military victory did not bring lasting stability. The Latin rulers struggled to control lands whose people viewed them as occupiers rather than liberators. The Byzantine political order fractured. Although Byzantine forces eventually reclaimed Constantinople decades later, the empire never fully regained its former strength. History often remembers cities by the armies that destroyed them, but Constantinople survived. Its walls still stood, its churches still echoed with prayer, its people endured. Yet something invisible had been broken. The relationship between Eastern and Western Christianity entered a new era of distrust. The divisions that already existed became deeper, more personal, more difficult to heal. The Fourth Crusade never reached Jerusalem. The greatest victory of the Crusade was against fellow Christians. One decision became one betrayal. One betrayal changed 1,000 years of history. The walls had been breached. The treasure had been taken. The empire had been broken. But the greatest consequence would not be measured in gold. It would be measured in memory, because the scars left in 1204 did not
end when the fires went out. They echoed across centuries, and they still shape the story of Christianity today. If the Fourth Crusade devastated the Byzantine Empire, did it also make the fall of Constantinople to the Ottomans centuries later more likely? And why do historians still see 1204 as one of the most consequential turning points in medieval history?
Some wars end with a treaty. Some end with a victory. The Fourth Crusade ended with something far more dangerous, a wound that never truly healed. For centuries before 1204, the Byzantine Empire had been the shield of Eastern Europe. It absorbed invasions that might otherwise have swept deep into the continent. Its walls protected trade. Its armies guarded the crossroads between civilizations. Its scholars preserved thousands of ancient Greek and Roman texts that might otherwise have disappeared forever. It was not a perfect empire, but it endured until fellow Christians broke it from within. In 1261, Byzantine forces reclaimed Constantinople. The Latin Empire collapsed. The imperial throne returned to Byzantine hands, but the empire that emerged was no longer the superpower it had once been. Its treasury was exhausted. Its population had fallen. Its influence had faded. The scars of 1204 could not be erased. Every decade that followed made recovery harder. Then, a new power rose in Anatolia, the Ottomans, patient, organized, relentless. Over nearly 2 centuries, they expanded across former Byzantine lands. Each conquest tightened the circle around Constantinople. By the 15th century, the once mighty empire had become little more than its capital and a handful of surrounding territories. Then came 1453. After a 53-day siege, Sultan Mehmed II captured Constantinople. The Byzantine Empire, after more than 1,000 years, was gone. Historians continue to debate one question: would Constantinople have fallen in 1453 if the Fourth Crusade had never happened? No one can answer with certainty. History offers no second chances, but most scholars agree on one truth: the sack of 1204 permanently weakened Byzantium at the moment it needed strength the most. The empire survived. It never fully recovered. The Fourth Crusade also left another legacy. The divide between Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic Christians grew deeper than ever before. The mistrust born in 1204 echoed through generations. Even today, conversations between the two traditions often return to the memory of that betrayal, not because it was the bloodiest crusade, but because of who carried the swords. The Crusaders never reached Jerusalem. They conquered their own civilization instead, and history never forgot. Empires rarely fall in a single day. They fall one decision at a time, one compromise at a time, one betrayal at a time. The Fourth Crusade began as a mission to save Christianity. It ended by dividing it, and perhaps the most devastating enemies in history are not always the ones outside the walls. Sometimes they are the ones who enter through the gate carrying the same cross. Some civilizations are not conquered, they are betrayed.